Nearly a year after floods claimed the lives of more than 400 people in KwaZulu-Natal, Build One SA leader Mmusi Maimane is visiting the province. He's in KZN to assess if any progress has been made in rebuilding infrastructure damage caused by the floods. The eThekwini municipality has finally received 1.5 billion rand to repair damage caused by last year's floods. This has raised concerns that the money may be looted rather than being used to benefit flood victims. Senior Reporter Dasen Thathiah is tracking that story and joins us for the very latest. A very good morning, Dasen. And it's not an unfair assumption to make that any money that is channeled towards a serious situation or an emergency, as in the instance of the floods, may be looted by some nefarious characters that occupy leadership positions in local government. But give us a sense of that 1.5 billion arriving in the area and the progress that has been made in terms of really what Mmusi Maimane is expecting to see as he visits different areas that were affected.
Well, Rafiwa, I think my answer will be twofold. On the one hand, yes, it would not be out of order to be suspicious of how monies are spent in the eThekwini municipality. You know, over the past few weeks, we've been covering what is essentially a tender fraud trial of over 320 million rand that disappeared from the municipality. So no, that would not be untoward. But at the same time, in fairness, there has also been work that was done in the city since the floods before this money was allocated. So there was progress made, perhaps not enough according to some of the residents, but certainly work was being done in trying to effect some of these repairs. So this is the kind of context within which Build One SA comes to KZN, so to speak, to have this I guess these site visits to interact with the community and also to introduce their leadership here. So it's an opportunity as well for the party, I imagine, to capitalize on that. But I'll bring in now the leader, Mmusi Maimane. As I mentioned to my colleague, your timing is, I wouldn't say it's opportunistic, but at the same time, you're coming to a city that has its own problems with its existing political parties. You're introducing leadership of Build One South Africa. And I think the question that's always asked is, what do you suppose you can do here?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's out of a place where I think the potential of this province is significantly under-realized because of the politics. Secondly, we are going out there to scour the province for the best talent. Now, to achieve that means that you've got to open your doors, even as a political party, to say, let civil society leaders, let legal people, let business people come and be, because politics is far too important to be left up to politicians. It needs a range of people. So what I'm grateful for is that as a starting point, we're introducing new talent. Yeah. The second issue is we are re-engaging communities. I think part of what happens in this particular province is that you've got political formations that are driven on, in some instances, religious formations or ethnic formations. That's not what we need. What we really need is to organize South Africans around values. To say this value of Ubuntu, this vision of a radical centrism, these ideas that we're putting forward can be shared across black, white, Indian, colored. They can be across all sectors of society. And then lastly, when we are here also, we will be taking on litigation on this issue. Yeah. Because the issue of corruption, the issue of the lack of accountability of the state, we've got to show activism. It's not just talk.
Just to interrupt, litigation on the issue of the sewage crisis.
Correct. Because ultimately at the end of the day, you are violating human rights. And the Human Rights Commission needs to be held accountable. We need to ensure that the municipality is held accountable. And ultimately, it's about the right to health. We are here in Human Rights Month, as it were. But in truth, there's a deep violation of human rights when you increase the E. coli level and send citizens into hospital.
Is this not a particularly, as much as I said it's perhaps an opportune time, but is it also not equally difficult? Because I see the utopian vision that you're talking about here, and I imagine that a lot of South Africans would want that. But if you look at KZN and if you look at those issues that they're dealing with now, do you not feel that they might be so consumed with that at the moment? Things like crime, things like in KZN, in Durban, the sewage crisis. do you not think that they may not see your party for what you are trying to achieve here?
No. I think when I speak about a 10-point plan that we've tabled, we talk about a response to crime as an example that localizes policing. Part of the dilemma in this country is that we've got a national SEPS, which really doesn't have always intelligence on the ground. That's why when the riots took place, the lack of intelligence was part of the challenge, because the police were found napping. But to this vision of bringing everybody together, let's reflect on the riots and say, there was a misfocus on going, it was against this race versus that race. It's actually, how do we safeguard all citizens? Indian, black, colored, doesn't matter. So my vision is really coming to say, together we can, but also let us amend the laws of this country so that security is localized. Recently here, a musician, a famous musician, was murdered. We've got camera footage, yet the police have not been able to give us an update. These are the issues we are here to raise and take on the activism regardless of where you come from. So that's what we really want to come back to the community and reintroduce.
And lastly, I know that today your program involves engaging with the community in Mount Moriah. You'll also be looking at some of the infrastructure, particularly around the issue of sewage. But what for you would mean, by the time you leave here, what for you would mean that you've had a successful visit to KZN?
I think, first of all, just not only the reintroduction and the introduction of POSA to communities, but what I really want is for those communities to be able to go, how do we work together to resolve the issues? I want to hear, we'll lay a charge with the Human Rights Commission. I want to ensure that there's a technical report on the sewage plant issue, and I'm engaging engineers to deal with that matter. And then lastly, I want the leadership here, not only that of POSA, but of the communities like Mount Moriah, etc., to come together collectively and say, here's the table 10-point plan for KZN, and if we achieve that, we begin to work on it so that citizens can know actually, whether in government or out of government, we want to begin to work with the people.
Thank you very much, Mmusi Maimane, the leader of Build One SA. Rafiwa, the program will start here. This will be the introduction of some of the leaders of the party before those visits that I spoke about. One of the burning issues is obviously the sewage crisis that the city is facing, and that's one that's had residents up in arms since last year.
Thank you very much for that update, Dasen. And of course, we will keep abreast with the developments there with you throughout the day. That is Senior Reporter Dasen Thathiah out in KZN following Build One SA as they evaluate the improvements or not that have been made since the KZN floods that we saw ravaging communities in that province.